Good evening and welcome to the final lap of our Osun governorship election coverage, coming to you from our Abuja studios. I'm Neota Ibe. Now, voting has ended across the state and attention has shifted to the sorting and counting of ballots at polling units. And before the results move through the various collation stages, indeed, on the IRF portal, that's the INEC result portal, there's been some uploading of results already. It's been a very busy day across Osun. Strong conversations, reports of voter turnout reported in several areas alongside isolated technical challenges and allegations of irregularities at some polling units. Security agencies say the overall situation has remained largely peaceful as their personnel continue to monitor the process. Across the state, 3,763 polling units, INEC officials are sorting and counting the votes in the presence of party agents and election observers. And as the figures begin to emerge, we'll keep you updated with the latest results, reactions, and developments from across Osun State as the process moves towards the final outcome. Stay with us. We'll bring you more analysis in the next 1 hour. But at the moment, if we can just look at that IRF portal right now, the IRF portal where some of those results have already been uploaded. It'll be coming up in just a while. Some results, as at last time I checked personally, there were about 1,600 results or thereabout that have been uploaded on the IRF portal. That's INEC's result portal. Just to tell us that more results, a total of almost 4,000 results are expected. So far, oh, there you go. 2,748 results have been uploaded. Remember, the polling units in Osun, just about 3,748 or thereabout, and so far we've seen 2,748 results uploaded. Expected is 3,763. So 73% of results have already been uploaded, and more would still be coming in. Hopefully, we'll be bringing you up to speed. Also, there were reports of incidents. Reports of incidents across the Osun State, and a citizens reportage platform, that's ireportinec.org. That's the website there. You see reports of about a little over 40 incidents that were reported. Yeah, there you go. Last time I checked, there were just about 43 incidents that were reported, but now we're seeing it 44, now 45. You see the numbers are going up 45. You see the total 45, critical 3, high 22, medium, they were all graded according to what they consider as how do you say it now? Critical, high, medium, or low level, so that you are able to say, okay, these are critical things that need to be acted on real quick, or they're just medium level in terms of impact on the election itself. So 45 incidents reported, not independently verified, but these are citizens reportage sent out to the ireportinec.org platform. It's a citizens reporting platform, and there you go. That's what you're seeing on your screen at the moment. So we'll keep you updated. We still have our reporters on ground. Mercy Babajide is there. Igbalani Omoni is also on ground, and Omolola. They are all on ground in Osun State, and we're keeping us updated as regards what the situation is at the moment. We do know that counting is going on in some places, and in some other places, results have already been concluded, and they will be announced officially from the INEC itself. That's where the results, final official results, will be announced. But to discuss the elections, in-depth conversation on the Osun elections, I'm being joined by Dr. Kavwam Stanley, Deputy National Publicity Secretary of Middle Belt Forum. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Also here is Mr. Osita Okechukwu, former Director General of the Voice of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Nigeria.
I think we're still expecting some other people to join us, but while we're waiting for them to join, I'm not sure. Oh, yes, we do have a political affairs analyst and election observer, Mr. Achike Chude, who joins us virtually. Achike, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you there. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. We're expecting Dayo Oyetola, a public affairs analyst, who will be joining us in the course of this conversation. But while we're waiting for all of that, let me start off with, the elder. Okay, so Mr. Okechukwu, you've heard reports. I mean, you're not on ground, so you heard reports of what happened in Osun. How would you describe it so far?
No, my happiness is the fact that liberal democracy is still thriving in my dear country. What do I mean by that? That if you become a governor, or whatever office you're elected to, that you know one day there will be an election. If you're an incumbent, you know there will be a referendum to examine your performance. And those who are contesting against you, there will be also a referendum on their performance in the past. I think that's what played out in Osun. And I expected it to be tensed up because it's an off election. And an off election coming at the last one before the general election. Naturally, all the political parties and all the gladiators will try to play as if they are playing their last card. So I do not expect anything less. And what I appreciated from my observation throughout the day is that INEC had done so well in terms of the constraints that we normally have and challenges. And yes, there were skirmishes, but at least it wasn't as anticipated given the crisis that reported prior to today's election.
Okay, given the build-up to the election, one would have thought that would have been worse than this.
Yes.
So we should say thank you to the Most High for ensuring that we have peace.
Oh, yes.
Now let me bring in Stanley here. Stanley, Mr. Okechukwu has described it as a referendum on the performance or level of service of the incumbent or any other, all those contesting as the case may be. But how would you describe the election in Osun?
Well, for me, it has been a very, very toxic contest, that was characterized by all manner of violent orchestrations by all the actors, from both ends, with, vehicles being apprehended belonging to candidates, with their flex banners on all of them, with even weapons. I mean, people coming on air threatening to kill and to unleash terror. It then makes it look like a war, not an election. And for me, beyond the fact that we're going into elections, I believe that what should underpin every election cycle should be about performance, not about the ego of the actors. Because for me, and I hold this is my own personal opinion, the way the APC is taking this election, it's more of an ego trip, such that if they are not able to deliver Osun, then it means that, perhaps the 2027 general election might, not go their way. And to a very large extent, for me, I believe that as some of them have come out to say that this is a dress rehearsal for the awaited coronation of the president in 2027, I believe that it significantly shatters the very foundation and the fabric of our democratic process, where elections should be free, fair, and transparent. Okay. And with the incident reports, recorded, it equally goes to show to a large extent that INEC has not done its due diligence to ensuring that, the process, goes on without any hitch. And like it's been stated, it's an off-season election, and of course we shouldn't, have issues relating to, technicalities that often, mar the transparency or credibility of our elections.
You said something here that it's an ego trip for a certain political party. Yeah. But let me take it to Achike. What would you say about the elections in Osun? I mean, yes, it's like a litmus test, the last election before the general election, so to speak. But how would you describe it? Stanley's talked about, I mean, let's look at the things you've said. Mr. Okechukwu says it's a referendum on the performance of all those contesting. Stanley has said this has played out as though it's an ego trip for a certain political party, even though some will argue that it's an ego trip for all the political parties looking towards 2027. But how would you look at it, the elections in Osun?
I'm not sure it is exactly an ego trip, in as much as I agree with what the speaker has said, but it's not so much of an ego trip. This is something that is of critical importance to both parties. So I think it has to do a lot with the reality that these two sides are living, the APC and then the Accord Party. And so it's more than an ego trip. It is something that has to do with what they see as their immediate existence, either as the government in power or as the opposition. And at the same time, it is supposed to be a referendum in terms of the ideals of democracy. But this election is not actually a referendum. By the time there's an interference to the political process through acts of violence and intimidation that has seen to the death of over 40 people in the period leading to the election, it is no longer a referendum, but an expression of the degradation of the country's democracy and the ideals of democracy, which abhors the level of the violence that has characterized this particular election. And we must also emphasize the fact that the presence of a democratic government is not an indication of democracy. Because under Mobutu Sese Seko of Congo Democratic Republic, there were elections we are holding. In Cameroon, elections are being held. In many other parts of West Africa, elections are being held. Are we saying that all of these elections that are being held under, with the kind of things we see that are wholly anti-democratic, that we can say that they are genuinely, a referendum on the people or, on the government of the day, when we know that the context of these elections did not reflect the free expression of the will of the people in those places? An election is not conducted on the day of the election where people go into the polling booth to vote. Elections are done in essentially two parts. Then the third part is post-election. What happens? After elections, do you go to court? Do you go, to express your grievances and all that? But the period leading to the election itself, the processes leading to the election is even much more important than the actual day of the election. Because what you see on the day of election has already been predetermined by the processes that have led to that election. So I cannot exactly, if this election happened devoid of the very toxic and dangerous, and violent atmosphere that we had that attended this election itself, then we can say, yes, it is a reflection of it is a reflection of the performance or non-performance of the government of the day. But you now bring in other external factors, the intimidation of the candidates, the violent, period that preceded this election, and then the fear, among the populace that might perhaps make them not want to come out for the election itself. So these are some of the issues. So I'm not impressed with what has happened. Yes, the actual election itself, or the day of the election, because that is what has happened in the elections that we have, observed. The day of election is usually the most peaceful of the period of the total, the total period of days that attended that particular election. I remember the Anambra election, the first election that brought Soludo to power. There was so much tension in the air, with IPOB making declarations and threatening and warning people not to come out on the day of election for fear of their lives. And yet at the end of the day, there were just very few reports of malpractices or violence in the whole of Anambra State. The same thing with virtually all the other elections. Perhaps it has to do with the fact that on the day of the election, there is heavy deployment of security forces and all that. So that has helped to stem the tide. So I do not exactly share, all of the sentiments that because an election has held, therefore it is a referendum on the incumbent, or whether he has done well or he has not done well. When elections are marred with this level of violence, I don't think in good conscience, based on the understanding of the ideals of democracy, that we can say that the people have exercised their franchise. Therefore, it is a referendum. The ideal thing is that is what it is meant to be. But in actual fact, is it really?
Okay, but let's look at it, gentlemen. There is the movement towards the 2027 elections, and I was just trying to read out something here. That rhetoric that seemed to have led to this election in Osun now is painting a picture of what's likely, some will say, in 2027. Because I'll give you an example. The challenges, for instance, the issues of logistics. Remember, there was a report that came out by Kimpat and identified issues of logistics as a major challenge to this election. And INEC said everything about logistics has been taken care of. But we have issues around dried out ink pads, beavers that were malfunctioning at this election. And this is just a one-off election, an off-cycle election. But is that not speaking volumes concerning 2027 that's going to be the entire country? And especially considering the fact that logistics has remained a perennial problem with our elections in this country.
Let me start by saying from what Achike said. We can't be compared to Cameroon please. It's important. While I have my condolences for those who lost their lives and cannot encourage people fighting for election on do-or-die basis, I do not encourage that. But we can't be compared to Cameroon or any of those quasi-democracy countries. We passed through that. Yes, Nigeria might not have got into the ideal situation of liberal democracy, but for God's sake, we are not Cameroon. We are more than that. We are more than that. Even freedom to the press. Does it calculate that? The number of tantrums that goes on in our media in the build-up to the election, until yesterday when they said parties should not campaign anymore. So for God's sake, let us say, as the leader said, that when he climbed down from the tree, he said, I will beat my chest, but we have done so well. Today, before we arrived at the studio, we have reports that INEC have gotten to about 60%. The result already released on its own portal. The situation room of the civil society organization must have gone ahead of that. Those are progress. So we cannot say that there's no progress done. I'm not saying that I condone violence. We have it on record that a former Nigerian president once said that the democracy, because of his election, he should not consume any blood. That is the golden admonition of President Goodluck Jonathan, ex-president. So to come out to say that we're like Cameroon, we're like this, we're like that, we're not.
Yeah, but look, while he might have used that example, the thing is the build-up to these things. Stanley, I wanted you to weigh into this as well, but we need to go on a quick break. When we return, we'll pick it up from here. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We've been joined by Dayo, Oyetola, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us, Dayo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okechukwu, that's my name.
Dayo Okechukwu. We have Oyetola. Okechukwu. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Sorry about that. Okay, so before we went on that break, we were talking about the Nigerian elections and the preparations towards 2027 vis-a-vis the matter of logistics being a recurrent decimal. Now, before I come to Dayo to weigh in on that, tell us what you think about the election so far and this seeming incurable disease of logistics. Stanley, you were going to weigh in on that, the situation with logistics, why it seems to be a persistent issue. I mean, today the report is that ink pads were dry, and BVAS was, well, at the time was malfunctioning, but then why should ink pads be dry for an election that is just one-off?
Well, can you?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Stanley.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can hear me. Can you?
Hello, Stanley. Okay, Dayo, maybe you should weigh in on this. So just tell us your view of the election, but then look at it from this other side as well. The perennial issue of logistics. Today it was dry ink pads. In some parts, the materials got there slightly late. But
yeah, thank you very much. When I came in, I of course I heard that we were talking about logistics, and of course I beg to disagree with the analysis so far. And what do I mean? Today, 94.5% of polling units opened exactly at 8:30 a.m. So statistically, we cannot say that our logistics wasn't right. Our logistics strategy works. It worked in Ekiti, and we have also, repeated it in Osun State. So we did say earlier that we fine-tune our logistics strategy in such a way that all we need to do is to repeat the same strategy is going to work. In an election where 94.5% of polling units open at 8:30. In fact, in many of these polling units, our officials got to the polling unit to many of them as early as 7:30. So in such an election, statistically, our logistic strategy worked. But you mentioned isolated cases of a dried ink somewhere. I can't remember what you said the other time. These are isolated cases, and we did say before, and beavers. We did say before this election that every stakeholders, including the media, should try as much as possible not to use isolated cases and generalize it as what is happening in the election. Yes, we can have pockets of instances like that. That is why we have replacement, for such items, including beavers. Remember, initially we had configured over 1,000 beavers for this election, and after the mock accreditation in Osun State, the commission, increased the number from over 1,000 to over 5,000, and about 1,300 of those beavers were to serve as backups. If we expected that all the devices will work 100%, that would not have been.
Okay, so I deliberately picked out the question of the dry ink parts because ink parts are supposed to have been checked. It's like ballots not properly printed, or if I dare say that, the incident forms not properly printed or all stuck together. These are things that you check and be sure that, okay, they are not sensitive issues.
They are not sensitive issues.
Good. So one would have thought that those kind of things would be like checked and be sure that the parts are taken care of, especially, and I use the word especially for an off-cycle election. But and I knew why I deliberately introduced you
this
as
didn't
a
happen at scale. Bro, if the information from Osun is that all or most of the pads were dry,
then
there's a problem. When it becomes a problem. But you see, even if you go to the market today and you buy like 5 units of an item, the possibility that one of them could not be up to date or could have one problem or the other is there. So what I'm trying to say is that as media, if we want to analyze election, we should stop overblowing isolated cases to make it look as a problem. That can be dried ink pads in 1 or 2 units and it will be replaced. Otherwise we would have had issues in some of those polling units. So please help us.
Which is why we insisted that you come and answer that question.
That's what I'm saying.
But you are now looking at that. You're trying to anyway. Let's leave that first. We'll come back to this conversation. Preparations towards 2027 elections. Let me ask. I'm back to you, Stanley. If you can hear me now, where you think INEC could have done better, being that this was just one location. And then 2027, which is just a few months away, we're going to have the entire nation all running around.
Yeah, in as much as I would not want to hold INEC accountable for complicity, maybe, or undue influence, principally often undertaken by political actors or people representing political parties. But you should realize that the shortage of logistics or the inability of the electoral umpire to provide certain sensitive materials that are integral to the electoral process in itself is a tactical way of rigging some people out of the process, which significantly undermines the credibility of the election results themselves. So there are instances INEC officials have been accused of colluding with certain political figures to either reconfigure even the beavers machine, that it does not work in certain areas for fear of what would be the outcome of results in such places, or outrightly delaying the commencement of voting in certain polling units, all in a manner to what? Predict or determine the outcome of the elections at the end. So to a very large extent, our democratic process can only be sanitized and its credibility can only be enhanced when INEC upholds the highest sense of professionalism and probity with respect to logistic issues. There are instances, for instance, for every election to hold, sensitive materials are often distributed at least 24, at times even 48 hours before the commencement of elections to ensure that those materials arrive at those polling units.
Material.
Within record time for elections.
Stanley, I'm sure you're talking about insensitive materials. Sensitive materials are distributed that day of the election.
Insensitive, please, insensitive.
Okay.
So to that extent, what I'm saying in essence is that INEC has a significant responsibility to ensure that elections hold within the time that is stipulated by law, and to ensure that nobody is disenfranchised from voting, to ensure the credibility of the process. Because it is all these incidences that we are talking about that collectively undermine the credibility of the electoral process. If this is an off-cycle election,
Stanley, I may have to interrupt you here, Stanley. So sorry about that. But our correspondent Nee is on ground at the moment at the collation center. Let's just hear what he has to say. Give us an update on what the situation is at the collation center. Nee. Yes, Nee, what's going on?
Yes, Newton, all seems set here, but I'm not sure all seems set on the part of INEC. Yes, as I was saying, everything is set here. The seats are even labeled. This is where the collation officers will sit and rule out the result or the collated result from all 30 local governments. Then the returning officer, amongst other security agencies and stakeholders, will sit up there. The observers will be on my left-hand side here, party agents here. And as I said, all seems set. But it's going to take a whole lot, and we're expecting to take a while for the results to come. And we're talking about 30 local government here, although from the reports we've been getting across various situation rooms we've been to, they are saying that the IRF portal has received about 50% of the results. But, it's up to INEC to declare or let us know if they are ready. We went outside the INEC office also. We've not been able to see any collation officer from any of the local governments. So I'm sure it's going to take some time. We are set here. We're just waiting for INEC to start the process. They'll be able to give more information.
All right, thank you very much, Nee. Thank you. We'll be coming back to you for more updates. So let me just ask Mr. Okechukwu one last question here. Mr. Okechukwu, do you see a sound pathway to 2027 for Nigeria's democracy?
Oh, yes, I do. I do. Because I've studied democracy across the world. And I know that no matter whatever anybody might say, we're improving by the day. Most people do not believe today that by this time, 60% of the results will be in the IRF, INEC own, not the situation room. And as I told you earlier, if my reference to the situation room colleagues of ours, their record is more than that percentage. They were talking former INEC release, which means this result might be delivered tonight. And when that happens, what it did show us, I'm not talking about the outcome, it's INEC that will declare who wins. But the point of the matter is that from even what I've seen here, it means that no consistency on either side of the victory, according to the word shootout from INEC portal. So if that is the case, I don't see why the 2027 election will not do better than this. I also understand that both the international organizations that are helping the country are doing whatever they can to shore up INEC facilities. And the federal government of Nigeria as well is also playing its role. The National Assembly had approved their budget, and that budget, since it's approved, it becomes an act. It will be, I don't see why we should have any hitch, to be honest with you.
All right, thank you. We'll take a moment, and when we return from that, we'll be speaking to Mr. Oyetola to tell us what the plans are for 2027. Mr. Okechukwu, we want to thank you for coming in this evening. We really do appreciate you for coming. Thank you. We'll also have an election observer join us here and a voter mobilization advocate for the youth especially, so that let's see if the youth can really step into becoming the leaders of tomorrow. We'll bring you details of all of this in a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back. We've been joined by Depier Goody, a voter mobilization advocate. Thank you for joining us, Depier. All right. Before we get into this conversation, we still have Achike joining us virtually. Stanley is in our newsroom, and Dayo Okechukwu is here. I didn't say that. I did deliberately introduce him as a public affairs analyst. Dayo is actually the chief press secretary to the INEC chairman. And he's here. He was supposed to be coming in codedly, but Dayo just came blaring. Anyway, but before we get into this, get back into the conversation, let's look at that portal again, the IRF portal, where about 79.38% of the votes have been uploaded on the INEC. Remember, the INEC portal, the IRF portal is been recognized by law, even though it's not a collation center. It's just a platform where the results are uploaded after they've been counted and signed off on. But INEC will be announcing the results later. But then there's Citizens Reportage platform as well, ireportinec.org, that reported a couple of incidents. About 45 incidents were reported on that platform. Some critical, some, I'm trying to get the exact words there. Some were considered critical. Some were considered high, medium, and low at different levels of occurrences. So that these are things that in the course of the review of the elections, INEC and the security agencies and the election observers, everybody involved, stakeholders in the election process will be looking at to say, okay, what can we do to get better? So let's come back here and look at towards 2027. What is the way forward? I mean, some will say Osun is a litmus test. Now we're headed looking at 2027. Campaigns are starting in the next few days. So Dayo will be responding when every other person has finished. So let me start up with you, Achike. What do you think we should be looking towards? Campaign starting on the 19th of August, unless that is changed. But what do you think we should be looking towards 2027?
Well, I think the issue of security, especially during the campaign, is critical. There's a reason why I talked about I was so passionate about the pre-election activities. Because as at this yesterday or so, we were hearing reports from the spokesperson for the APC that about 40 people or 40 members of the APC had been killed. The previous week, the Accord gave an estimate of 29. So if that is to be believed, that is one death too many. And I don't want Nigerians to, feel comfortable about the death, of the violent death of just one single Nigerian. Because we are getting so much used to this bloodletting and the fact that people are killed anyhow. For election, violence of this type, of this magnitude, is not an indication of progress. I know that Mr. Okechukwu has talked about progress and rest, but I can tell you, if we are looking at data and statistics, that we have not had it so bad in any off-cycle election that I can remember. I have witnessed some, not as much as 50, 60 deaths just for one gubernatorial election. So it is. So what essence is saying is that we must do everything that is needed, even as these campaigns, kick into gear, to ensure the safety of lives of our citizens in every part of this country. And so what it means is this. Look, elections are done in different, there's a different process that leads to the actual conduct of election on election day. And so you have the security agencies doing their own part. For when you talk about violence, you remove INEC from it. In terms of people who should ensure that there is peace, there's the right kind of environment that is created so that elections can hold peacefully and people can come out to vote to exercise their franchise. So INEC has really nothing to do with that. And that's why INEC has been engaging or engages at all times with stakeholders, including civil society, the media, and security agencies, to also find out the state of readiness before the election proper. So I think that there was a failure on the part of government to protect citizens. And so you are asking me what I want to see. I want to see a more peaceful environment. I want to see people who engage in acts of violence being brought to book. And so that everybody will see that the country will not tolerate this descent into chaos and anarchy just because people have to exercise their franchise in a democratic environment. It is critical. And then so all the agencies that are involved in the conduct of elections, we want to believe that that they will do the right thing to protect the environment. Therefore, INEC, yes, the other speaker had talked about the 94%, in terms of attendance at the polling units. I don't know whether that's at the time that they made this collation, that 94%, that they were very sure of 94% in terms of the early preparation. But it would appear that one would look at INEC as perhaps having done much better, because there's no one single organization in Osun State that would say that they had people in 1/3, that they had their observers in 1/3, of all the polling units in this, Osun State. That would mean about maybe 650 people in all of the polling, in most of the polling units, 1/3 of the polling units. So how they're going to arrive at 94%, I think, is not something that they alone can say they were able to ensure that, to see it and to be sure and verify that about 94% of polling units actually that INEC had attendance. But from generally the reports that we have, it would appear that most polling units had INEC officials get that the INEC officials got to those polling units on time. So these are some of the things I think that we should be looking at.
All right, thank you, Achike. Stanley, towards 2027, because we're running out of time, what should we be looking towards?
What we should be looking towards the 2027 election is, first, INEC should ensure that it is fair, unbiased, and transparent in the electoral process, because when the votes are already cast and then what is announced does not reflect the wishes and the will of the people, that in itself is a recipe for disaster. Beyond that, the government has a sacred mandate to ensure that it delivers a free, fair, and credible election by not interfering with INEC and allow its independence as an electoral umpire to conduct this election and give Nigerians the opportunity to express their wishes through the ballot. Beyond that, politicians across board, irrespective of political party, have a responsibility to ensure that they restrain their supporters from carrying out acts of violence that could undermine the electoral process. And the security has another responsibility, which is very important and germane, to ensure that there is safety for election observers, INEC officials, as well as the ad hocs have recruited for the elections in the different polling units across the country. And beyond that, it is expected that the final declaration of election results in 2027 should not in any way be a recipe for disaster, which means it should reflect the wishes and aspirations of the people. And I believe that that is the only way to deepen our democratic process and to ensure that the people remain committed and carry out their civic responsibility of voting. Because when you look at the level of apathy in the even off-cycle elections, it tells you the extent to which Nigerians have lost confidence in the electoral process.
All right.
If you really interrogate across the country, a lot of persons are unwilling to even go to vote because they believe that their votes will not count at the end. So let INEC do its best to ensure that it restores the confidence of the public in its ability
All right, thank you, Stanley.
to deliver a credible election.
All right, INEC will hear us. But there's a video we have of violence, and I want us to quickly play that video. And some thugs came into a place with guns during the elections, and let's just watch that video. Can we hear the sound, please?
We don't want them using again. Gun. We have been attacked by gun. See the carcass. Go. Let me see. I can't see that. What happened? What happened?
Go to carry our vote.
Where? Which polling unit? Which ward?
Ward 4, unit 2.
Oshogbo, Abi?
Oshogbo, yes, sir.
All right, sir. Let me see. All right.
Ashiriba in Oshogbo here.
Thank you.
All right, that was that occurred reportedly at polling unit Ward 4, polling unit 2. Some people, thugs came in there firing into the air, to scare the voters away. But Deputy, you want to see the voters mobilized for the elections. But what does he say? How would this in any way help them want to come out?
You know, these are actions before elections that cause voter apathy. These actions actually create voter apathy. It makes Nigerians to lose interest in the process, not see a need to get participating in it. And what I want to say is that the security agencies should do their best, because one is for INEC. INEC will come in after the security agencies has done their best. The security agencies should do their best to ensure that Nigerians are safe and everywhere is peaceful for the elections. So it will build their trust again, because from the last elections, a lot of Nigerians are not confident in these elections. For example, the Ekiti election and as at today. But I'm happy what happened in Osun State today, because the people of Osun resisted oppression. Just like what you can see in a typical Nigerian election. If they shoot gun here and there, everybody's out. Nobody's out. They are done for that day. But you can see the people resisting vote buying. The people still came out to vote in numbers. The people say, you know, despite the shooting, they are still out. So, but the security agencies and INEC should do better to regain the trust and confidence of the Nigerian electorates. So,
ahead towards 2027,
yes,
you think if they up the ante, if they do better, that would?
Yes, if they, you know, doing better or
doing
not,
better in the sense that would it be arrest these ones and have them prosecuted?
Exactly. Like yesterday, I saw a video of thugs that had guns, and they were arrested. Then later, just after that post, Sahara reporters carried it. The next post was the naval person in charge there was redeployed, and the politicians who came with those thugs were fled. Those kind of things don't encourage electors to participate. So they should ensure that people who are caught with guns, people who are caught with this, who are causing violence, even threats, if you come out to vote, you will do this. Anybody who says that openly, even in secret, even in their political party rallies, engagements, they should not be joked with. Anybody who says that, say, if you come out to vote, if you're from this tribe, if you're from this religion, that person should be dealt with there and then. Nothing should be seen as a joke. Nobody is joking. It is people's lives at the end of the day. So no one is joking with people's lives. So they should be arrested and every decision and actions they make should be accounted for. All
right. Thank you. Dayo, before we get you to be like the icing on the cake, let's just hear from Olawale Rashid, who's a spokesperson to Governor Adeleke. Olawale? Olawale, if you can hear us, this matter of violence, thugs coming into the polling unit with guns, and generally, what do you think of the elections? We just have a few, about 1 minute or thereabout. Okay, Dayo.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What we are facing now is what we suspected to be an alleged plot to declare the election inconclusive. For the 20-something percent that remain, they're already snatched.
Polling unit anymore. It is held in a communication space. So the possibility for misinformation and misapplication of information, mishandling, is very high. Having said that, if other key stakeholders in the electoral space, rely on a sample size of 700 polling units, we rely on a sample size of 3,700 and so over 3,700 polling units, because there is a system in place that gives us a cinematographic view of the election space on election day. We know what is happening on the polling unit. So if we,
you know what's happening on the
yes,
so you knew about the people coming there with guns?
No. I'm talking about electoral data.
Okay.
I'm not talking about incidents of whatever.
Okay.
There are two different things. Remember, in the election space, INEC is a referee. Our job is to conduct election. We do not handle the security, even though we collaborate with security agencies to ensure that they provide the right, secure atmosphere for election to go on, seamlessly. So I'm talking about data, because of the consequences of information, to our elections. Now I'm saying that the source, the authentic source of electoral data in an election conducted by INEC is INEC itself. You cannot rely on a third party who has based their conclusion on a sample size of 700, sometimes 300, sometimes even on confirmed numbers of PUs. INEC has the capacity to monitor election in all our polling units, and we're saying that based on what transpired today, as of 8:30 a.m. in the morning, over 94% of polling units were ready, fully activated for voting to commence. And that is the data. Any other data is not is contradictory to what we have. Having said that, in preparation towards 2027, I like to say that elections are not going to get easier. We need to understand that. Nigerians are very politically conscious. The space is huge now. There are a lot of political parties, and you can see the way things change. In the last election in Osun State, we know the big contenders there. That map changed in this election, from some parties to another party.
Okay,
so,
just hold your thoughts.
Yep.
We have Olawale Rashid back now. Olawale.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah,
nice having you with us. I'm here.
Okay, so I asked a question earlier, your observations about the elections generally, and that the incident that happened at Ward 4, polling unit 2, where hoodlums came in there with guns. What's the take on all of this? Elections generally, let's start with that one.
Thank you very much. The election was conducted largely peacefully, and results were trickling in. And of course, we have most of the results already uploaded on the INEC portal. But now the challenge we are facing is that toward the collation, there are ballot snatching. Some thugs are snatching ballot boxes all over the place. It happened at Ede, it happened at Owode, it happened at Ire. And the intention, we guess, is driving toward declaring the election inconclusive. And Mr. Governor is crying to the world, shouting to the world that democracy must be protected, the vote of the people must be seen and to be counted. Already, the winner is emerging, and the whole world is already sure of who is emerging. Now, the challenge we are facing is that ballot snatching is affecting likely consequences of the collation. And the issue is that we are few minutes to the collation proper, and what we are having is security agencies are withdrawing, thugs are snatching ballot boxes, and we don't know. So we thought there is a threat to the entire election and we guess there is a plot to declare the election inconclusive. That's why we need to shout to the world to protect democracy.
You said, in your words, you said towards the collations as if they're snatching ballot boxes. But I thought the results were supposed to be counted and announced at the polling units. Why are they snatching ballot boxes still?
No, of course, yes. You know, even if it's announced and you have the results from the polling unit, you still have to go to the collation center, the local government collation center. And when you get to the collation center, they also verify and authenticate the results before you now move further. So already at a day, you won't believe a retired general actually was involved in ballot snatching, ballot box snatching, until the people rose and retrieve it. So we guess there is a plot to derail the outcome of the election. And we are shouting to the whole world that the winner of this election is known already. People already have the data here and there, and what is left is formality of the INEC declaration. But now, toward that end, there has been challenges. Security agencies are withdrawing from sensitive places, and you're having talks taking over, ballot boxes being snatched and all those. So we are using this opportunity to call on the whole world, lovers of democracy, to actually protect democracy in Osun State.
All right, thank you. Dayo, I mean, you're hearing that. He is on ground, and this is what he's saying. But
so, but let me quickly say this: that INEC is the only body statutorily empowered to announce election results. So we want to encourage all key stakeholders, all players in this election, to play by the rules, obey the legal framework guiding this exercise. Okay, so I'm not going to say beyond that. Nobody can determine the winner of any election until INEC, which is statutorily empowered to do so, announces. So it is better for all key players to wait till INEC does so.
What he said
that
about
the issue of ballot boxes snatching or ballot box snatching, whichever way you want to put it. Well, you remember that we said that the beavers is the game changer. I don't understand the motivation behind anyone snatching ballot boxes in an era where technology has changed the trajectory of our elections. So what do I mean? Once polling ends, what the law says, what the Electoral Act says is that votes should be counted, in the presence of party agent, then the presiding officer will enter discourse in the form ECHA, which is then scanned and uploaded, via the beavers to the IREF. So once that has been done, I doubt if snatching a ballot will have any impact whatsoever on the outcome of the election in such affected.
Are you saying that it's not likely that INEC officials may have been compromised here?
No, well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the question we should have asked, or the question that should have been raised, or the clarification that should have been raised by that fellow, is to explain to us whether the result at the affected polling unit had been counted before the box was snatched. And I'm saying that if the result had been counted, by the presiding officer in the presence of all the polling agents, and that at the form ECHA has been uploaded to IREF, then the collation process had already moved from that place to the ward, collation center.
All right,
so that should be the question, But I think that those are allegations that should.
Let me ask, Olawale,
security agency.
You've heard Dayo say, if the results have been counted and the results sheet signed by the agent and announced within the polling unit and uploaded, then there's no worry, regardless of whoever snatched any ballot. Are you assured then? Do you have some level of assurance that the results will be as they're supposed to be?
I thank the Chief Press Secretary for that clarification. But the reality is this: if you are having instances of ballot boxes being snatched, not just in one town, not in two towns, and being perpetrated by a particular people belonging to a particular political party, then you should give a source of concern to every stakeholders. And as to whether the results are already counted, of course, counted. But why? When we are moving toward collation, why are security agencies withdrawing? And why are the places being yielded to thugs? And why is it that it's like ballot snatch, ballot paper boxes being snatched is being encouraged? So we are worried. And why the delay in uploading most of these results to the portal? Because most of them are ready. We learned around 70 or so percent. What happened to the 30%? We are just calling attention of the whole world that we want monitoring of INEC properly so that the direct result, the vote of the people can truly count. And as to announcing result or not, that is the statutory responsibility of INEC. And of course, nobody will do that. But what we are saying is that we are worried. We are worried and we want the whole world to help us be more further searchlight on INEC and the final stages of the electoral process.
All right, thank you. Let me get back to you, DP, as we're round down here. I noticed when he said something about the people resisted the snatching of the ballot box, you reacted. You were somewhat excited.
Yeah, because, okay, he said that INEC is the only body that can announce election results, which is true. But if INEC is transparent enough, we all should be able to see what is going on the portal. We should see who is leading. That's how transparent it's supposed to be. Because I can give reference to Rivers State. When results were uploaded at the polling units, results were also snatched. Ballot boxes were also snatched. Then they used those same Form EC8A, change the paper, change the numbers, and that was what was actually collated at the collation center. So what will you say about such a thing that happened like that? That the original result from the polling unit where a particular candidate won, then they snatched the results, and when they got to the collation center, it was the change of results and change of figures that happened there they collated. What would you say about that? That's not transparent enough.
Dayo, we have to go. So
yes, we have to go. But let me quickly round up by saying that as we speak, I'm watching the IREV here. Over 3,119 result from 3,119 polling units have already been uploaded on IREV. That is a very good level of transparency on the part of INEC. And on what she said about transparency, it is important for us to clarify that IREV is a public result viewing instrument. It's not a collation system. Okay, so IREF cannot tell you who is leading or who is not leading. What IREF is supposed to do, as far as the law is concerned, is to give the public, a window to see the results as they are coming in. We have to wait till, different levels of collations are done and it gets to the final level, the state collation center, for results to be announced. If we have been patient since 8:30 when the whole exercise started, we need to exercise more patience. But no result is being delayed. The IRF is working optimally, and to have recorded 3,119 polling unit results, at around this time, it's a good one. It's an excellent performance, for INEC. And I'm going to end by saying that before coming here, I saw instances of citizens preventing a vote buyer in a number of polling unit from carrying out the nefarious act. We also saw cases where people try to prevent ballot box snatching. As long as it is safe to do so, the citizens also have a role to play in Nigeria's election and in growing our democracy. We need the right culture. That's where I'm going to end. As we approach 2026, election is not a do-or-die affair. Campaign should not be a do-or-die affair. And the voters should know, and informed voters should know that it is your right to be able to exercise your franchise without being intimidated. On that basis alone, if a party campaigns and then there's a lot of violence around it, it could be enough. It could be an enough basis, for disarming voters to want to look the way of other parties. So we all have a role to play.
Dayo, we have to go. Thank you so much, Dayo Okechukwu. But in rounding up, we'll take 30 seconds each to the other participants here who haven't said much. Achike, you have 30 seconds and your time starts now.
I'll do it quickly. I think one of the statement about the security forces, withdrawing their services around this time, is something that is worrisome, and I hope that there will be an investigation to that to see whether it is true. Because the safest period of an election from practice is from the morning hours to around 2-3 p.m. So from 3 p.m. is the most dangerous period, tension-laden period where anything could go wrong. That is the period where some of these miscreants begin to misbehave, and that is the time that security forces are supposed to be expected to be much more vigilant. So if at that particular point in time they are withdrawing, then it is a cause for concern, and it is something that calls for further investigation to find out whether it is actually true.
All right. Thank you. Stanley?
INEC should eschew any interference or any manner of intimidation by either government or whatever powers that be, to ensure that they deliver a credible, a transparent, free and fair election which will deepen our democracy. The electoral body has a significant responsibility in ensuring the sanctity of our electoral process. And I want to charge and encourage INEC to uphold professionalism and probity and be accountable to the Nigerian people by delivering an election that is free, fair, and credible, so that at the end of the day, our younger people would be motivated to participate in elections, where the process is heavily compromised and INEC looks the other way and the election results do not reflect the wishes and aspirations of the people. It breeds voter apathy. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Olawale Rashid, are you still there? Closing thoughts. Your closing comments, Mr. Rashid?
Okay.
In 30 seconds, your closing moments.
So our appeal to INEC is to ensure that the people's vote actually count, and there should be no inconclusive declaration. The winner should be declared, and the public know the winner already. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, JPA.
INEC experience enough in this election to encourage voters turnout in the next election in 2027. INEC should try their best. Security agencies should try their best to address issues of violence and chaos from all around the country, so that people will not be discouraged.
All right, Dayo.
Yeah. Thank you very much. In any election, INEC does not have a candidate. We are not biased electoral umpire. So as far as Osun is concerned, I will appeal to people to remain calm and allow the process to run its course and conclude. And for 2027, all things being equal, if you look at the last election conducted under Professor Joash Ojuamukwiton, SAN, our chairman, and we have, I think there's no cause for alarm. We have nothing to worry about.
Okay.
But you see, INEC can conduct elections. Nigerians must come out so that we cannot defeat apathy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We've here in the studio, we had Dayo Okechukwu, Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman, Depriye Goody, Voter Mobilization Advocate. Thank you for joining us. In our newsroom, we had Dr. Kavwam Stanley, Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the Middle Belt Forum, joining us. We had joining us virtually Achike Chude, Election Observer and Public Affairs Analyst. And then all the way from Osun, we had Olawale Rashid, a spokesperson to Governor Ademola Adeleke. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for coming this evening. And this is where we say thank you for letting us be a part of your evening. Our coverage of the election in Osun State ends here, but we will continue to keep you updated as the results come in. We still have a crew on ground. Messi Babajide, Igbalani, Omoni is on ground, Omolola, they're all on ground to keep tabs on the situation there. And Bernard Achike is also going there to join them as well, just so that we keep you updated. Remember, on News Central, it's about the pulse of the people. We'll keep our fingers there just to keep the people updated on what's going on around them. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Neo Taigbe. Bye-bye.